everybody. Before we jump into today's episode, we have two sponsors we want to say thank you to for supporting this show. The first one is Routine. You guys have heard me talk about Routine, honestly, back from the early days of the podcast, and it's still a product I use every single morning. They have a prompt for me here. I'm going to do a little impromptu on this ad read today because honestly, this is a product that I truly believe in. And so I'm just going to tell you guys exactly what I think and why. First and foremost, this is a stat that they shared, but when you sleep, you lose between a pound and a pound and a half of water. And most of that's just sweating while you sleep. I used to not know if that was actually true, to be honest. I felt like a pound to a pound and a half of water seemed like quite a bit while I slept. But the one thing I did constantly pay attention to when I started using Routine was just the fact that before using Routine, I always felt a little dehydrated in the morning. And I'm one of those people that when I get up really early usually. I work out. One of the first things I do is some form of fitness. It's just like what I do before everyone's awake. And so it's very easy for me to grab a coffee, pre-workout, an energy drink, something with caffeine in it, and just go. When I am good about using Routine, first, I basically they come in these little single serve packets. They contain half an organic lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and they have no sugar in them at all. A lot of hydration products are going to have sugar. So one of the things about Routine that I love is that there's no sugar in there. So when I am good about doing this consistently, I will take one of those single serve packets, I'll throw it in my mixer bottle, and whether I also put in a pre-workout or something with caffeine or I just drink that separately, I try to drink that first. And the days I do that, I do genuinely feel hydrated and just have a different form of clarity all morning. A lot of people have tried to make their own homemade versions of Routine, right? You see people they take a shot of the apple cider vinegar, they put a little sea salt, a little lemon in a drink. This is essentially that, but in a product that you can take with you on the go, have it ready for you first thing in the morning. I know me personally, when I'm groggy rolling out of bed, the last thing I want to do is, squeeze a lemon, cut lemons up, go get the apple cider vinegar, find my sea salt. I just rip this packet open, throw it in my water, drink it, and it's good to go. You can try yours today. If you haven't tried it yet and you've been listening to this podcast for years, just try the damn Routine. Give it a shot. You can use code ShaneWhite30 and get 30% off your first order. So you get 30% off by using code ShaneWhite30 and go to yourroutine.com. To make it even easier, I've added the link to yourroutine.com in the show notes. So just click on the show notes for this episode, click on the link to yourroutine.com, and don't forget to use code ShaneWhite30. All right, guys, today's episode is also brought to you by NeuroRoast. Again, I'm going to go a little off script here. NeuroRoast is a product that I also came across during this year of 2023. They are a coffee company that's helping you optimize your brain function and overall well-being. This is another product that, to be honest with you, when I first started working with it, I was a little on the fence. I was like, do I really want to have mushrooms in my coffee? Well, folks, I will tell you, when I use NeuroRoast, one of the things that has stood out to me the most is I'll back up. People that know me know that I have way too much caffeine, typically. One of the things this year I've done a good job of is cutting out alcohol. Not completely, but predominantly, I don't touch a lot of alcohol anymore. What I think I've actually done the other way, though, is add a lot more caffeine. So I do definitely drink too much caffeine. That's something I need to work on next year, is to try to minimize how much of that. But NeuroRoast is something that has actually helped me because of the way they've formulated their coffee. Like, unlike regular coffee, which is, still something I consume, but NeuroRoast specifically doesn't cause jitters or crashes. Mushroom coffee provides more balance and sustained energy, allowing you to stay focused and productive throughout the day. So the times I do use NeuroRoast, I'll be honest, I just don't feel that jittery, like, I'm jumping out of my chair or standing here at my desk jumping around feeling. So give NeuroRoast a try. They have some really good flavors. I'll be honest too, the two guys that started NeuroRoast are just really good dudes based out of New York, and they're hustling, and hopefully they can get some people to try NeuroRoast this holiday season by listening to this podcast. So for you folks who've been on the fence, I'm telling you, it tastes delicious. They've done a fantastic job of making this coffee not only be functional, but taste fantastic. And if you want to try NeuroRoast, you can use code ShaneWhite. So it's super simple, just ShaneWhite at checkout. you'll also get 30% off. So if you go to neuroroast.com, and once again, I have added that to the show notes. So just click into the show notes while you're listening to this episode. You can click on NeuroRoast link directly. Don't forget to use code just Shane White, and you'll get 30% off your order. Hope you guys love both these products. I'm trying to not only bring you guys products that I use, but that I believe in on the podcast. I'm not taking ad reads for any brands that I don't really believe in. So anyway, hope you guys love both those products, yourroutine.com and neuroroast.com. I've added those links to the show notes. I hope you guys love it. And I got an awesome guest coming up right after this. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode here in 2025. We're going to talk today all about Expo West, the big trade show coming up for the natural food space out in Anaheim in a couple weeks. Kyle and I thought it'd be fun to talk about just, hey, what if this is your first time ever going to Expo? It's an overwhelming experience, as I can remember. It was only a couple years ago. What to expect if this is your first time going, whether you're a vendor, a brand, any of the people going. And then we'll hit on quickly too, just like what things that we're hoping or think we're going to see as far as trends. Kyle and I always have this fun thing, actually, ever since we started going. We should go back. I have some notebooks where I wrote it down. Where you and I always like kind of made bets on the plane ride of like what we think that the theme's going to be while we're out there, and then we compare it on the way home. So we should hit on that. But anyway, I'll kick it over to you, bud.
Yeah,
we had a busy start to the year. I traveled, so this is episode I think 2 or 3 of the new year. But let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do it. So Expo West, Super Bowl of events for natural food space. I think it's always, I think it's helpful if it is your first time, pointing out a couple of quick things just to be prepared.
Yeah,
it might
sure.
seem obvious, but like wearing super comfortable shoes. I personally couldn't imagine walking around the show in a full suit with, hard bottom dress shoes on. Like, don't look like a schlub, obviously, but dressing for comfort. It's a long day. I'd also recommend kind of spacing your caffeine kind of strategically.
That's a good one.
The caffeine intake in the morning, and then what tends to happen is there's a lot of caffeine drinks, so it's just like a caffeine overload. I know multiple years I've gotten not sick, but you just don't feel great when you have a coffee and then you have an energy drink and then you have a coffee alternative.
Another coffee. Yeah.
Before noon, you've had 3,000 milligrams of caffeine. Specifically for caffeine, don't buy coffee outside of the booth. Walk into the show and find a coffee booth or an energy drink booth. I always laugh at the incredibly long line at the coffee shops, like right outside the show. It's just like walk in the door and grab a free coffee.
Yeah. That's a good one. I would say the same thing with food. I think you and I did it last year for the first time really well. I feel like 2 years ago we went and we didn't do a great job on breakfast, and we hustled over there, and because we usually don't stay super close to the show. And I remember we both were like, same thing, just like gut rot of trying 5,000 samples of brands. And last year we went heavy on the protein at breakfast, loaded up. That's a good move. Get like a real breakfast before you go over to the show, because you'll sample all kinds of shit. And you'll end up filling your whole stomach up with that if you don't eat before.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I'm trying to think of a couple other small things. The one thing and this comes from our XBAR days and what we were taught on that team, and it certainly is true even now with NoBul partners. It's very, very difficult to not read someone's badge when introducing yourself. I always recommend try to make a point, like introduce yourself like a human being. Make eye contact, ask their name, ask who they're there with, company, what their role is. Obviously, you can look down on their bed and read all of that information, but make it a human interaction.
That's a good one. That's like trade show 101 that I didn't learn until definitely our XBAR taught me that. I agree. You know what's funny though? I remember you and I talked about it on the way into my first expo, which was with you. And I remember you saying that, and we had a different term at our XBAR for what that was called. And I remember you said, don't do that. And then I remember getting in there and realizing so many people were just staring down at my badge first thing. And I was like, oh, now I get it. Like people just like, I don't know what it is. If it's just people want to make sure they're not wasting time talking to someone that they don't think is beneficial to them, which that sucks anyway, because there's just a million good reasons to talk to all kinds of people at those shows. But yeah, you'll notice that if this is your first time going, you'll just all of a sudden see people that like you shake their hand and all of a sudden they just look down at your badge and they're not looking at you and they're talking and you're like, oh, they're trying to figure out what company I'm with, what I do. is this going to be a beneficial conversation for them, or should they just move on?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so don't do that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Just look someone in the eye and have a convo.
Other quick things that immediately come to mind, especially getting to Expo. You've got Disneyland right there, so the area is like kind of made for that traffic, but there are so many people that go to that show. So I would avoid Ubers as best you
Yeah, good
possibly
call.
can. If you are taking an Uber, have them drop you off like 3 or 4 blocks away and just walk the rest of the way, because trying to get right up to the front, you'll be sitting in traffic all day long. If you have a
Yeah,
rental
it's weird.
car and you're
Yeah, like in
driving,
layman's terms, it like it's so weird. It like congests in this way where you almost don't realize you're in the congestion until it's too late. I remember that happened 2 years ago. We were just stuck. So yeah, you just want to like you always. I feel like when you think you're close, just like get out and walk, and you'll be happy.
yep. And then if you have a rental car and parking, I would say unless you're there super, super early before the show starts, don't even bother trying to park in the convention center parking lot. There are a number of hotels and restaurants surrounding the area that charge $20 to park. It is worth every penny if you can park close and just walk over. There's no spots in the garage. Uber's a mess. Take your rental car, park nearby, pay the $20, and just walk.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. What was another one that's popped in my brain? One of them I thought of that. I don't know if you and I ever really aligned on this, but I feel like you and I just naturally do this because we love what we're doing. But God, just trying to like, I feel like everyone. This is if you're someone who's walking the show. Like Kyle and I don't have a booth at Expo West, so we're walking and meeting people at their booths. But some of these people are behind their booth for a full workday, having the same conversation over and over and over again for multiple days in a row. I think this year it's at least 3 days. I think they shortened it a little bit. I always feel like just trying to make like lighthearted conversation that maybe doesn't benefit you, but I know you and I do a good job of just kind of like ice breaking with some people you can tell are just burnt out or bored because they have the same damn conversation 1,000 times. And so if you can just be a slight change up in their day, I think it does open the door to even if it's someone you didn't think maybe it was a business opportunity, you might end up meeting. You and I have met people who we've stayed in touch with from Expo. Just I think like happenstance. We saw them. We're like, they look super bored. We should go say hi.
Yeah,
They
and
look
it's
bored. They look tired. It's funny.
well, and even on the opposite end of that spectrum, like too, it's very, very easy to linger. So like, let's say you're going to a specific booth to meet with a specific person, but you don't have a time block. If that person is having a conversation, don't interrupt that conversation unless you know who the other person is, because you might be interrupting the conversation that that person went to that show to have with that buyer from wherever. So don't
That is
try
a
to butt in,
great point. That's a great
because
point.
the buyer and your person that you want to talk to, they're going to be nice people. They're going to introduce you, but just move on to your next task or checkbox for the day. Come back. Don't interrupt that conversation unless you're super confident that the conversation you're interrupting isn't about POs coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, right? 'Cause I think before I went to Expo, I didn't understand how for some of the brands that are paying big bucks to have booths there, how important the random person walking by the booth could be. Like Whole Foods buyers have their badges turned around and they're just walking up to random brands and trying them and potentially having a life-changing conversation. So to Kyle's
Hmm.
point, if you're the person that just butts in and change, it could that happen. I remember last year vividly. I can't remember. I didn't want to say who it was. Someone was having a conversation with Whole Foods, and you and I were a few feet away, but seeing someone else come in and butt into them, and them having to be like, "Hey, this is really important." Or you and I have been talking to people we know really well, and all of a sudden they see someone who's really important walking over, and they're like, "Hey, I don't want to be a dick, but like, can you move along because this I need to talk to this person."
Yeah,
And me and
of
Colin are always
course.
like, "Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what you're here for." But definitely, that's a good one. That's a good one because I don't think you probably realize how many conversations are important that are happening. That there's so many. You probably the average person is just assuming that they could butt in. That's a great one.
Yeah. And then in terms of the second thing we wanted to talk about was kind of our predictions for the show.
Yeah,
I think the last couple years, some of the trends that stand out in my mind, certainly alcohol alternative, the rise of mocktails, alcohol-free beer. I almost would say like alcohol alternative has kind of branched into a number of different product types, whether it be this is a drink that doesn't have alcohol in it, but is meant to replicate a classic cocktail or a beer. So, like, just remove the booze, but still give me the taste. But then there's also this other rise in non alcoholic, which would be like adaptogen. nootropics, prebiotics, where it's still super, super flavorful, but they're not trying to create like a margarita. It's
Mhm.
a very typical lemonade, wild berry, watermelon flavor drink that you could certainly drink other than alcohol, but it's not them trying to produce just an alcohol-free product. So I actually think we're going to see that trend double down this year because of people moving away from booze, um, Gen Z's drinking a lot less. So I think that trend is something we've seen in the past that we'll continue to see more and more.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I'll piggyback you a little bit. I agree. I think the last 2 years, I think we saw the first few like really big like door opening of future brands. Like it always seems like Expo is a good place where you have some early adopter brands who want to pay the big bucks to go and show up there. I think we'll have a ton of that this year. I agree. I think there'll be a ton of non-alc, and then I think the other huge trend that you and I both are really close to. I think there's probably going to be a much bigger emphasis on protein, like whether that's, I mean, there's always been to some degree, but I have a feeling there's going to be brands that are just like screaming high protein, or they're figuring out ways to up their protein, or they bring an innovative product this year that they're showcasing that's the highest protein they've had. Protein's just blowing up everywhere. It's always been important, but I think it's even more important now. So we'll
Yeah,
see. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll
I agree
definitely
with
do.
that
We'll do a
one.
postmortem after Expo. We'll break it down on what we see.
I want to have a during our debrief specifically talk about mushroom, whether it's mushroom inclusions, not psychedelic mushrooms, but just, different kinds of mushrooms, mushroom coffee, mushroom. It's just, I feel like maybe not 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that was so hot. And
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
it's starting to die down a little bit. I'd be curious to see where the mushroom category is at this
Yeah,
year.
let's definitely we'll have to circle back on that one. I know it's funny. That one's been like a weird one that we keep seeing like more and more brands have, but it almost seems like we don't see the search volume or the noise around it. But we saw so many brands the last 2 years around mushroom.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna take a big bet that plant based is quieter this year.
to meat
That's
alternatives.
my that Yeah, just like I feel like that meat alternatives is that whole thing has died down a lot. We'll see. That's my like my other big bet. We'll see a lot less plant based stuff.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, so
All
we'll
right,
do a
everybody.
debrief. We'll see everyone out
Yeah.
in California in a couple weeks.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Talk to you soon.
See you guys.